Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Maybe it's the middle of the night, whatever time it is. You're looking to better understand Blink Without Delay. Took me a little bit to understand, but of course we want to all be writing our own code. So this is pretty important. Gives you the ability to not use the delay function, which holds up the whole circuit board. So what you're seeing here is flash without delay, which is pretty much the same thing, but it gives you an on time and an off time that are different, whereas blink without delay, which is right here, gives you an on time and an off time based on your interval, which is 1 time, so it's the same thing. So it'll be off and on for the same amount of time. This is pretty handy regardless, but I'm going to go over flash without delay. So obviously the main thing that we want to understand here is this current millis minus previous millis, and if it's greater than or equal to the on time, and I'll go over all that right now. Okay, so I'm going to go through this nice and slow so that maybe you can understand by the end of it exactly what's going on here, so you can use this kind of setup to run your own codes. So start off going through our void setup. I'm going to go through all this stuff as we go through the loop and whatnot. So first thing we're going to hit is our void setup, which just initiates our pins, turns them on, so we're turning 9 and 13 to outputs, can be high or low. So then we get to the first part of our loop here. We get to the unsigned long. Current millis is equal to the millisecond timer inside the Arduino, so the unsigned long is of course a positive integer, big one, and we're calling that current millis, and that is equal to the millisecond timer in the Arduino that starts counting up as soon as you plug it in. So it's going to make current millis equal to that number, whatever it is at that time. So we hit the first if statement. It's asking, is LED state 1 high? We look up here, LED state 1 is low, so we're going to skip past that one. Come to our else if, which is running otherwise, and it says here low, so yes, we are low. So now is the current millis minus the previous millis 1 greater than or equal to off time 1? So what's off time 1? It's right up here, it's 750. So we'll write that right here, 750. Previous millis 1 is 0 at this point, so we'll write 0 right there. And our current millis, let's say, is 5 milliseconds. Not a lot of time has passed at all. So we're just going to obviously do this, and I like to think of those two numbers as an equal to, which it is. So then 5 minus 0 is 5, and 5 is not greater than or equal to 750, so we keep going. So those are the numbers that are input at that time. So skips by that part, comes back down here looking for LED state 2 to be high. LED state 2 is low, so we're going down here. Current millis we'll say is 5. Previous millis 2 is up here, that's 0, so we'll write 0, 2. Are those two numbers greater than or equal to off time 2? What's off time 2? It's 400. So we'll write 400 right there. That's what we input up there as our off time. So that's still 5. We know 5 is not greater than or equal to 400, so we keep on going. So our millisecond timer just keeps counting up here. We get to 50 milliseconds, 50 milliseconds, still equaling 50. Of course, those are less than both of those numbers. So once we hit 400 down here, it's going to be 400 up here too. That's when things start to happen. So now 400 minus 0 is 400, which is equal to 400. Those two are equal to 400. So then we come down to the next part of our statement here. it's saying, okay, now that all this is good, we're gonna turn LED state 2 to high. So LED state 2 up here was low, so we can just cross that out and put an H up here for high, because now it's high. And that's going to be that way forever, because that's just a regular equal sign, so it's turning that to high at this point from now on. Now we come down to previous millis 2 is equal to current millis. So our current millis is 400. So that's going to change our previous millis 2, which is up here, to 400, and that's going to make this a 400 right here as well. And that's all that that's doing. It's just changing previous millis 2 to 400 instead of 0. Okay? So now we come down to digital write 2, or digital write LED pin 2 to LED state 2, which is now high. So that turns the LED on, that writes the LED on. So now the light comes on at 400 milliseconds that have passed in time. Okay, so now previous millis 2 is 400, so now we're going to just keep counting up here, because that's what the timer is going to keep doing. It's going to keep counting up. It's going to keep counting up until, so now this LED state was low, right? So we come through the loop again, say 5 milliseconds later, so this is 405, and this is 405. But now this time that we come through the loop, our LED state 2 is high, so we're not looking down at this part anymore. We're looking up here. Previous millis 2 is 400, as we see up here. Off time 2 now, we have to look at is 300, so we'll input that here. On time 2 is 300, off time 2 is 400. So now we're at 405. So now you see what happened here. Now when we come to this part at 405 milliseconds, it's looking for the LED state 2 to be high, which it is. Current millis minus the previous millis. Well, 405 minus 400 gives us the same 5 that we had when we started, so now we're back to 5 because the previous millis 2 got changed on that loop. So now 5 is not greater than or equal to 300. So it still skips this part of the loop because we're only at 405 milliseconds. So what do we have to get to? We're at 400 here. We keep going through the loop, We were at 405. So now say we hit 500 milliseconds. 500 minus 400 gives us 100, which is obviously not greater than or equal to 300. We need another 200. So if we add another 200 milliseconds to our current millis, so once we get up to 600 milliseconds, 700 here, 700 here, 700 minus 400 is 300. So that runs this part of the code here, but nothing's happened up here yet because we're still at 700 milliseconds, so that part of the code hasn't run yet. But down here, because we're at 700 on this side, 700 minus 400, like we just said, is 300. Turns our LED state 2 back to low, so LED state 2 goes back to low up here. And then our previous millis 2 is now equal to our current millis. At that time is 700. So we'll input an even 700 right here. Just so we remember, it's up here as well as 700. So we know now our previous millis 2 is equal to 700 from this point on. And it digital writes the LED pin 2 to LED state 2, which is now low. Turns the LED off after 300 milliseconds of time. So we can keep going here. This one's at low. Our previous millis 2 is 700. And of course, now our state is changed to low. So we're going to be looking down at this part of the code here for the low. Current millis was 700, so keep counting up here. We hit 750. 750 here, 750 here. What happens? This part of the code comes on. So now it turns LED state 1 to high. LED state 1 was low. Now we're high. Previous millis 1 is equal to current millis. Previous millis 1 is 0. So now it's going to be 750 at that point in time. Well, that's going to be 750 up here as well. And a digital writes LED pin to LED state 1, so it turns it on. So now after 750 milliseconds, our first light has turned on. So now it runs through the code again, looks for LED state 2 to be high. It's not, it's low, so it comes back down to this part down here, which we're, say, at 750, we'll say 750 now as well. 750 minus 700 is equal to 50, which is not greater than or equal to 400, so it skips by and continues to go. And that just keeps on going until you hit what numbers you have to. So because the current millis is going up and up and up, you have to have your previous millis on both of these going up and up and up. And if you subtract what it was before, it's gonna go by this time right here. So it's keeping, it resets itself every time, brings these two values back down to 0 at the time that it resets, because when you get your loop and your current millis turns to your previous millis and the equivalent, they become the same, then if you're at 750 milliseconds here, 750 minus 750 is 0. So at that time when you run this part of the loop, it turns your value of these two back to 0, which then will count up from 0 all the way till it's equal to your off time, whatever you set up here. And then it's going to keep doing that over and over again, no matter how big this number gets, because this number is going to change to whatever this number is every time it resets and goes through the loop. So I hope that kind of clears it up for you. Maybe it made it more confusing. Hopefully not. It's very, very handy. Get rid of that delay function. Okay, and here it is. Two lights flashing separately, not holding up the board with the delay function at all. So all those other pins are available for whatever you want. You can see here we use the snap circuits, so you could rebuild this really easy.